Namaskar, good evening to everyone, and thank you very much for joining a very special session this evening. A very special session that we have brought in this evening for you, and we thank you very much, the entire audience and all the listeners, that those who have joined us. This special session is going to be based on a subject called Dhrupad, the most ancient form of Hindustani format of classical music. Well, as you can see, Panditji is going to speak about Dhrupad and get into deeper insights of this particular subject, as he's perhaps the only living torch bearer of this subject, and obviously for this gharana called Betia Banaras Gharana. He needs no introduction. His music, his teachings, his lecture, demonstrations, all of these span over 70 years, 7 decades now, and he has been pursuing this almost single-handedly and trying to take it of Dhrupad across the country and in other countries as well for so many years now. He will be talking mostly on certain aspects of Dhrupad as a subject at large, and how the other forms of music like Khayal, Thumri, Dadra, Kajri, all the other forms of Indian music slowly originated and were influenced by Dhrupad, how it began and how it is standing today. To give him company, we have a very talented tabla accompanist, Mr. Aniruddha Mukherjee, very, very well known. He's a very dear student of none other than the maestro Pandit Shubhankar Banerjee, very erudite tabla accompanist of the country, and Aniruddha has been learning from him, although his initial tutelage has been from Sri Devashish Mukherjee. Aniruddha has been performing across India and many other countries, and he has been accompanying some of the finest musicians of the Indian classical arena. So we begin this session, and thank you very much for joining again. Begin with, I will have some questions for Panditji, and my personal question to begin with is, why is Dhrupad as a subject, why is it important for every performing artist or every performing aspirant to learn Dhrupad and then get into any other form of music at a later stage? But initially, to begin with, what are those elements that will help a musician or an aspiring artist to learn Dhrupad, and how will he or she be to benefit from it, whether he or she is going to be a vocal performer or even perhaps an instrument performer, because Rudra Veena, as you know, is an instrument where the Dhrupad Ang is being played. So my question to you, sir, is why is Dhrupad important for any aspirant who wants to pursue music as a career?
I thank all the viewers all over, and very good evening to you, all of you. The question is about this Dhrupad. And let me just say one word about Dhrupad, the Dhruva Pada.
A little louder.
Dhruva means fixed, unmoved, and Pada means text or poetry. But this Dhrupad is based on certain edifice. I should say it needs a raga, it needs a tala, it needs a sahitya or the poetry. What happens when someone starts practice Dhrupad in the initial period? What happens is that there is a voice training and voice culture which creeps in there. That means Before starting Dhrupad teaching, we try to prepare the voice of the students, how to throw the voice and to do the voice culture and retain the voice delicacy all over the singing period. Now in Dhrupad, one starts to know the ragas. As you know, that raga sangeet is our mainstay for classical music, North Indian or South Indian. The student starts to know the ragas through positions selectively with a steady voice and knowledge of talas and rhythms. Now, after a certain period, he or she can go forward and learn various compositions in different talas. So, your musical ground is getting strong. You may devote yourself in Dhrupad fully or switch over to Khyal if you like, and then learn the intricacies of Khyal singing and become an able singer. So it is very evident that Dhrupad brings the edifice on which our classical music, Hindustani classical music, stands on. It is a very firm footing.
Thank you. So, my next question is, how old historically is Dhrupad?
Dhrupad, I would say it's more than 600 years old. Certainly, it is more than 600 years old because we find in Shastras that before Dhruvapada, there was one form of music which was known as Prabandha. And Prabandha was the precursor of Dhrupad, as I say. And then Dhrupad was properly structured. And what we find today is the structured form of Dhrupad, which dates back to 650 years or so.
So, is Dhrupad, when you're talking about 600 years or so, is it still considered, or is it actually considered to be a dominant form of Indian classical music?
It is still a very dominant form, said to be the most commanding genre of Hindustani or North Indian classical system. It's a very, very commanding genre.
Okay, so when you're talking about dominance in terms of Indian classical music, then Dhrupad, this is considered as the most dominant form. What are the basic characteristics of Dhrupad which makes it the most dominant form?
Correct.
Why is it dominant?
Correct. Distinct features of Dhrupad. Number one, there is a specific composition which is known as Bandish, which is a poetry by a composer. Two, it is based on a specific rag. Three, based on a specific tal. And next, there is a specific singing style. That singing style is called Gayaki. All this to be learned from a knowledgeable teacher or a guru.
But why do you think Dhrupad, as you say, why is it said that it has got maximum influence or on other formats of music, especially khayal? Leave alone the other parts.
Yes. As I said, Rag Sangeet is, I would say, at the center of our singing classical music. This Rag Sangeet has influenced many other forms which came later. Now, when one learns Dhrupad, I should say, what are the characteristics of Dhrupad, and before that, if anything is done. Yes, it is very important to mention about Alap, which has a very strong ground, very strong place before singing Dhrupad. Alap gradually unfolds a raga in various speeds, mainly three. Rag Alap demands various capabilities from the musician, and I use a very significant expression here. He or she must show the aesthetic balance in their rendition. Only then their music will become soulful. Now, a Dhrupad, as I said, has certain points. As I said, composition, specific rag, specific tal, and a specific way of rendering them. And it is it has always been known as a spiritual sort of form, because in the past composers used to compose many compositions dedicated to gods and goddesses, the ritus, the components of music, and the spirituality as such, the dedication towards the Almighty. So it formed a very important basis. After that, Khayal emerged as a very dominant form. And if you ask me to say a few words about the Khayal, or you have some other question?
No, we wanted to understand how did khayal get influenced and how did khayal come from Dhrupad?
Right. As I said, Dhrupad has certain
That's the camera.
Dhrupad has certain components. That means it needs a raga on which it is based. I should say that before coming to Dhrupad, as I said, Alap forms a very special basis. In Alap, when we start Alap in a particular raga, we have a very steady voice. We gradually unfold the sentiments and the picture of that particular raga, and we move forward from the middle octave and the lower octave. We gradually go to the higher octave and come back. That is known as slow tempo alap. Then we have middle tempo alap, in which there are certain combinations of notes, combinations of rhythms take place. And lastly, that fast rhythm, in which we have the crescendo. We say that it is coming to an end. The alap is coming to an end. Then we start a composition based on the same raga, bandish. Composition means bandish, and it is by a a reputed composer. It is based on a tala, and when we Dhrupad incidentally has four parts: Sai, Antara, Sanchari, Abo, and these are the necessary components of Dhrupad. Nowadays, we find that Dhrupad is being sung only with two parts, and that is not correct. But maybe for some reason uh, it is being shortened, but that should not take place, because I feel very, very deeply that the name of the composer comes in the last stanza, that is the fourth stanza. If we don't come to that position, we will not be able to know who is the composer. It is a disrespect to the composer. So I firmly believe that we should sing Dhrupad with four parts. And after that, we do some rhythmic variations. We say Laikari. How Laikari should be done, how the rhythmic variations should be done, it has to be, this particular subject has to be learned in a very careful way from a knowledgeable group.
So Khayal also has something like this.
Exactly. So when after a very long period, Dhrupad reigned supreme, say 600 years or so, then there was a conception that there could be a kind of form of classical music which could be called khayal. Khayal means kalpana. And the reputed khayal singers, what they did, they borrowed so many things from Dhrupad. From the alap, they had borrowed the vilam with vistar. They had borrowed boltans. They had borrowed many variations of bols. They had borrowed the rhythmic patterns, the laikari from the Dhrupad. And I will come to another genre which is known as dhamar very shortly. Let me complete about Dhrupad. So Dhrupad has influenced khayal singing, and khayal singing has been dominant for the last 200 years or so. And khayal singers were originally Dhrupad singers. Okay. Aladia Khan Sahib, Fayaz Khan Sahib and his father, and then Gwalior Ustads and Pandits, they were all Dhrupadiyas. Then they started composing khayals gradually. And khayal has borrowed from many fields, including folk music. So khayal has a very big compass.
In fact, we heard that the musicians like Pandit Ravi Shankar, Aliapur Khan Sahib, they all learned Dhrupad. They had to, under the tutelage of Baba Alauddin Khan.
Baba Alauddin Khan Sahib learned Dhrupad, Dhamar, Veena playing from Ustad Wazir Khan of Rampur, who was a very famous musician of his time. And naturally, Ravi Shankar ji, Aliapur Khan Sahib, Nikhil, they all learned Dhrupad, Dhamar, and the ala portion naturally they had to learn, and they played on their instrument with a sarod, sitar.
Because I remember Ravi Shankar ji talking to you about certain Dhrupad compositions,
Yes, certainly.
which he had learned.
He was singing in a very small way. Certain Dhrupad compositions, I had the good fortune of having his company for quite some time. So from Ali Akbar Khan Sahib also in San Francisco, he gave me a few compositions which his father Alauddin Khan Sahib had collected from various sources, including his Ustad.
So, what are the main talas or rhythms of Dhrupad broadly?
In Dhrupad, the main tala is Chautal of 12 matras. Chautal means chartal. That means it has an accent for four times.
Can you have a demonstration of Chautal
Yeah.
for the listeners, the students?
Dha, dha, din, da, ga, da, ge, din, da, dit, ga, di, ge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. And then you have Chaptal of 10 mantras. Then you have Shultal of 10 mantras.
How does Jhaptal and Shultal goals, if you can, for the listeners?
I will. And then you have Teoda. So these are the main
Teoda.
talas.
Teoda is 7 matras,
7 mantras.
like Rupak in
Rupak. Rupak. Rupak is a very strange tala. We always have an accent on the first matra, first beat. Rupak is one tala where the non-accent goes. Ti, ti, na, ti, na, ti, na, ti, ti, na, ti, na, ti. Whereas Tura, ti, ti, na, ti, na, ti, na, ti, ti, na, ti, na, ti, 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 na, ti, na, ti, na. 1.
And in Jhaptal, there are 10 matras, as I know.
10 matras in Chaptal, but the gate, G-A-I-T, gate, the way of proceeding is different from Shultal, which also has 10 matras. Shultal is a Samachanda matra, tal, and Chaptal is an Vishamachanda. 2, 3, 2, 3. You can play. There is one thing which I would like to explain.
Can you be a little louder?
I would like to explain. That is, today I don't have the mridang or pakhavaj. That is why I'm not able to show you how pakhavaj player plays Chautal, Chaptal, Shultal, etc. But the tabla players, and Aniruddha is a very good one, they adopt the same bolts and they play it on tabla. When I'm singing khayal, I would be using a bowl as de na de de na de na de 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 na de de na de na na de. When I'll be singing a Dhrupad, the cheka will be different, bowl will be different. Dhage, dhage, din, dhage, dhage, din, dhage, dhage, din, Shultan now. So you have seen that 2-3-2-3. Shultan will be 1-2-1-2-1-2-1-2-1. So how does it go? Dha gade nak dik gade nak gadi gade nak dha gade nak dik gade nak gadi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Dha gade nak dik gade nak gadi gade nak dha gade nak dik gade nak gadi gade. There is a slightly easier theka or bowl which many Pakhawaj players come out with. What is that? Dha dha din dha tit kata gad dha dha din dha dha din dha tit dha tit kata gad dha dha din dha dha tit kata gad 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 1 2 3 4 5 6 7
Can you, if you can just enunciate any composition on Chaptal, because it's one of the most common talas in Dhrupad, before we go to another subject called Dhamar, is it possible,
Sure.
just for a few minutes maybe, because on Chaptal then we'll be able to see something.
Let me explain a little. In Dhrupad, there are many types. You will find in the books that there was a term as Bani, B-A-N-I, Bani, which is applied on Dhrupad singing. What is that Bani? I will not explain in detail because it will take a very long time. But I will just say there are 4 Banis which are almost extinct today. I had the good fortune of learning these Banis from my father, who was my guru, and he learned it from his guru in Banaras. So, Banis constitute a very important role in Dhrupad singing, but it has been overlooked. 4 Banis have been there. One is Gaurhar Bani or Gaurari Bani or Gauriya Bani. There are many descriptions. I say Gaurhar Bani, Dagur Bani, Khandar Bani, and Nauhar Bani. Very short description of this. Gaurhar Bani has long means, that means traveling from one note to another, distant. It has a long glide and it takes various loops. So this is known as mead. We call it mead. And it is the main constituent of Gaurhar Bani. Very difficult to sing properly. One must have proper breath and all, breath control. So Tansen was definitely a master of Gaur Tansenji. Dagur Bani, which is somewhat easier, it has a simpler gait. Khandar Bani is Gamak Pradhan, we say. There is one ornament, Gamak, which comes from almost from the navel or below the chest. That sound comes. It is known as Gamak. There are many types of Gamaks. It is a Gamak Pradhan composition, a Khandar Bani composition. Nauhar is a very peculiar and very interesting Bani. It has jumps, unexpected leaps from one note to another, one octave to another. Not commonly heard at all these days. But as I said, I'm fortunate enough to demonstrate all that and sing also with my pleasure. So I have explained four types of banis which were there, which were the main constituents in Dhrupad singing in olden days.
In Chaptal, is it possible to demonstrate
Yes.
any one of these banis?
As I said, Chautal constitutes the main tala of Dhrupad, and it is a slower tal of 12 beats. I will just sing two lines of any Dhrupad of Chautal so that you will understand how Chautal sounds, and then I'll come to Chaptal, how Chaptal sounds.
What raga are you planning to sing? Any particular raga?
Let me sing one. The composition is by Inchavaras Sai, who was a very great Dhrupad singer in the court of Muhammad Shah.
No.
In the court of Muhammad Shah, Mughal Empire, and he pays tributes to Muhammad Shah, in whose court he was employed, and he is describing the various components of a ship, and he is comparing it with the Dhrupad. You will find it very interesting. गुण समुद्र तामे तन जहाज मन सौदागर ले चली श्वास पवन की जोर. Jahaj, a ship, which is our body. Tana jahaj man saudagar le chali swas पवन की गुण I sang only the first part, which is known as Sai part. I did not sing Antara, Sanchari and Ahu because of lack of time.
So our next question is interesting. Uh, we will get into another form called Dhamar, which is very closely. But
Very good. Before that, you asked me about Chapta.
Chaptal, yes, if this something can be sung in Chaptal
I
also.
will in 1 minute.
What raga are you going to?
One relation. One of my compositions in Puriya Kalyan.
Puriya Kalyan.
As I was saying that Dhrupad, Dhrupads, thousands of Dhrupads have been composed having subject matters of varied types. Uh, Description of gods and goddesses, describe nature, our spiritual life, how it should be. There are many things like that. So, and praises of gods and goddesses. So, this is one such composition dedicated to Lord Shiva. Japamana Shankara Mahadeva. Japamana Shankara Japamana Shankara Mahadeva Devadi Deva Tripurari Pinaki Bhalachandra Japamana Shankara Japamana. I some rhythmic variation so that you will know how it is done and how it should be done. I do it in my own way. That means there are some static ways of doing the rhythmic variations. 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 6 times, etc., which are based on mathematical calculations. I have also learned in that way in my childhood. But later on, I developed my own way of doing Laikari. That means I don't count anything. I start from an odd matra, odd place, impromptu, and definitely I come in a very smooth fashion on the sum, which is known as the first beat. So I will show you how I do my Laikari and what are the static ways of doing Laikari. Japamana Shankara Japamana Shankara Japamana Shankara Mahadeva Devadi Tripurari Pinay Bhalachandra Japamana Shankara Japamana. This was, we say, Dipun, double. And now I'll try to do something. I don't know whether I'll be successful or not. God alone knows. This Trimatrik Chand Japamana Shankara Japamana Shankara Mahadev Devadeva Tripurari Vinod Bhalachandra Raj Japamana 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 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 this is and now my impromptu Lakani Japamana Shankara Japamana Japamana Shankara Mahadev Devadi Deva Tripurari Vinaki Bhalachandra Raj Japamana 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 Shankara Mahadev Devadi Deva Tripurari Vinaki Bhalachandra Raj Japamana Japamana Japa Janamana Shankara Mahadev Devadi Deva Tripurari Vinaki Bhalachandra Raj Japamana Japamana Shankara Japamana. So what I did, whatever came into my mind, I vented it out, my expression. Now the thing is that my what I feel very deeply is that in my rendering of Dhrupad, Dhamar, Khyal, Tumri, etc., there should be an aesthetic balance of all the components. If I'm doing Lakari, unfortunately it is found that sometimes they sound very harsh, or they are very monotonous, or they have no designs. So I avoid all these things. I always want to be soulful, but not skillful. My motto is that my music will be soulful, but it will embrace all the components which are desired components. So I go along that way.
It's very nice. And if you wanted to come to Dhamar, as because it's a very elite subject, and if I am not mistaken, this composition Japamana Shankara, is it your composition?
It is one of my compositions.
It is your composition.
Many compositions are there, which I have done. Whether they are good or not, it satisfies my mind.
This was an excellent composition. So, because there was a question if somebody wanted to hear your composition and this was your composition, so
Right.
I want to tell the viewer or the person who requested that this was the composition of Panditji himself.
Okay.
So we come to Dhamar, and if you can in brief talk to us,
Exactly.
let us know what Dhamar is, what are the matras, and a small composition in Dhamar.
Of course.
And we after this will slowly conclude.
The Dhamar is another form of, I would say, Rag Sangeet. Why not? It's based on a raga. It's a composition. It's a Dhamar composition. The peculiarity of Dhamar composition, Dhamar, is that it's a form of music as well as it's a tala. Dhamar has to be sung or played in Dhamar tal of 14 mantras.
Unlike Dhrupad. Dhrupad can be in many talas, but
Dhrupad
Dhamar has to be in Dhamar tal.
Dhamar talas. Before going to Dhamar tal, I would like to say that I missed saying when I sang this Jhap tal, Many people call sadhana the japtal. I have tried to study and research, and I have come to the conclusion that sadhana is the same as japtal. Then what is the difference? I have found the difference as sadhana belongs to a category where the description of going to the war by Rama, Ravana, etc. is described. That is why when I sing Chadhata Rama Raghubir Ranabir Ranathira Lankagar Sanga Chale Lachuman Dhanushadhari. So Chadhata Rama Raghubir Ranathira Lankagar war. Rama is with his gallantry is proceeding towards Lanka to rescue Sita. So it's a very strong. So I say it is a sadhana. There are many sadhanas like that. And Japtal, as I sang, there are many other Japtals. Many Japtals, beautiful Japtals, which I sing with all devotion. So I wanted to make my position clear about sadhana and Japtal.
So
Dhaman is a form of music as well as it is a tala. Gadita dita tha, gadina dina tha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 1, 2, 3, 4.
you want to sing one small dhamar for us?
Okay. What shall I sing?
In Shankara, you have anything?
Shankara,
Rag Shankara.
Shankara is one of my favorites, and I have one Dhamar composed long ago. Jovana Madhamati Khelata Bhumi.
Was it your own composition?
Of course.
So this is also your composition.
This is also my composition.
Can we have it?
Yes.
Yes, then people can know.
Small rhythmic variations getting bigger and getting slightly bigger to add color. I should say it should not be a very tiresome or monotonous kind of thing. It should be full of light, full of brightness. Otherwise, I'll not sing. Jovan madhamati kelat madhav ke सब ब्रज नारी जोवन मद मारे. I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you and I'm starting from here. Jovana madamani kelat hori maage saadale sab brajanari jovana 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 madamani jovana madamani kelat hori maadava ke saadale sab brajanari jovana 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 madama jovana jovana madama jovana 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 madama jovana madamati kelat माधव के साथ ले सब प्रजनादि जवन मदमादि मदमादि मदमादि. God is very kind to me that I don't get into any sort of improper place so that I have to regret. Unfortunately, it would have been a very painful thing for me. Fortunately, it is not. Jovana madamati, jovana madamati kelat hori madhava ke saath leya sab brajanari jovana madamati jovana madamati jovana madamati kelat madamati madamati
So now I will come to a very interesting, before concluding, interesting question, because there was a question here I saw. All our favorite and mostly all the Bengalis who are listening to this, they have a question. How has Dhrupad influenced Ravindra Sangeet and Ravindranath Tagore?
Very valid and interesting question. In his youth, Gurudev Ravindranath used to listen to the Dhrupad, Dhamar, and associated forms of music. In his house, Maharishi Devendranath used to invite stalwarts of that period, like Radhika Prasad Goswami and Jadu Bhatta and various other people who used to come to Jorasanko Rajbari, and there used to be music for hours together. Rabindranath has said that he had no patience to go to these pandits, go to these stalwarts, and sing in a very desired fashion all this music, all this music, Dhrupad, Dhamar, etc., all these compositions, all these ragas. Later, these things came into his mind, and when these things entered his mind, in his youth, they remained in his memory. And later, he used to compose all his songs, after the design of Dhrupad.
It's four parts.
You will find that Ravindra Sangeets have all four parts. And Sanchari is beautiful in our Dhrupad Sangeet because it goes away from Sthai, Antara, and Sanchari adds a different dimension. Rabindranath's Sanchari also is beautiful, lovely. So Rabindranath was influenced by Dhrupads, and of course Vishnu Puri Dhrupad, because those stalwarts from Vishnu Puri used to come, the Rajbari, and that is why I love singing those Dhrupads, which he composed. I would say, keeping the raga according to Vishnu Puri intact, and somewhere in some of the songs he has employed some words which sound very similar to the, I would say, original music. For example, if I shall I sing something? Murali dhuni suni yari mai jamuna tira tab soham tana mana jumana so bikai Murali Murali Suni Yani Mai Yamuna Kiri Dabasoga Tanamana Yamana Sobikai Charona Dhoni Shuri Damana কত মধু চরণ ধুলি সুনীত
So now my question is, as the listeners can understand perhaps by now, but something very interesting I would like to uh, share with you. I was watching my own YouTube channel, and I found that there is a monthly report which comes to me on from the YouTube channel called YouTube Creators. And in this channel, there is a statistics given of all kinds of music, not only whatever little I have done, but also many others, including some stalwarts. And the statistics say the kind of listeners that we have today. And on an average, a person who listens to one particular song which is of 5 minutes, the average time of listening is 1 minute 25 seconds. And this includes musicians like Pandit Jasraj, Chen Joshi, Hariprasad Chaurasia, Shiv Kumar Sharma, Rashid Khan. People on an average listen for 1 minute 25 seconds, leave alone people and insects like me. So the conclusion is the patience level and of the listeners have gone down very drastically, and which is very sad today. People try to listen to music. The charm of listening live has gone down. People try to listen to recorded music later on because of their busy schedule. So in relation to this, to understand, because Dhrupad, for a listener also, needs a lot of patience. not
Yes.
only for the performer, but for a person who wants to pursue Drupad,
Yes.
who wants to pursue this form, needs a lot of patience because it is the ancient and the most robust and rugged format of music. So, keeping this statistics in mind and people's mindset today, which seems to be very sad, what do you think is the future of Drupad, and why are people not listening to the subject?
A very interesting question. Certain misconceptions like excessive gamak, voice throw, etc., have to be rectified properly. Refinement, extremely, it is it is a very important word that I'm using. Refinement in every department. Gamak, if I do it like this, no one will be interested in listening to these gamaks. These are only some hollow sounds. Now, if I have this kind of this,
Kind of productions.
rasaheen voice through, people will not be interested. They don't have time to listen to all these things because it does not please their minds. The ultimate object of our music is rasanubhuti, ras anubhuti. So we have to bring the rasa in our music. We have to feel it deeply myself. I have to feel it, and then I can render it. If I feel something, and if I feel that I'm right, and I'm just doling out to the public, I'm absolutely wrong. So I have to edit so many things. I have to think very deeply as to what I'm doing and where I'm falling short. How to make my music, full of rasa, full of appeal. That is the most important thing. Appeal to the the listeners. If I feel something, feel something good, I should be able to radiate the minds of the into the minds of the listeners. That is my goal.
So where is
And I want to re-establish Dhrupad, barring all these misconceptions and misdeeds to its past glory.
so what is the future of Drupal as you think?
Future of Dhrupad is very good if we, as I said just now, if we walk on the right path. Dhrupad is a sublime subject. Dhrupad is a subject which will be enjoyed by all. Only thing is that we have to understand that subject in its proper place and render it properly so that it becomes, as I said, rasan. It becomes a piece of lovely object.
Well, thank you so much, Panditji, for this beautiful session, very educative session, innovative session, enterprising session, enlightening session. If there are some questions, I would like to address those questions and ask Panditji on behalf of the listeners.
Okay.
If there are not, one can always write to us. Panditji has got his page, the Facebook page called Pandit Falguni Mitra. One can always subscribe or like that. Ask any number of questions, at any point of time, not only about Dhrupad, but any other form of Indian classical music. If anybody gets stuck while singing any kind of song, including Hindi film music, Panditji is there to help that person to understand how to produce it in the right fashion. So you can write to us on Pandit Falguni Mitra Facebook page. You can get to listen to some of his compositions, some of his renditions of last. We have been able to capture some recordings of last 20 years. Some of them are there. We are trying to retrieve them because the journey is about 70 years now. Panditji had at home Ustad Rashid Khan Sahab play tabla with him. We are having that cassette. We are trying to retrieve that. So there are many stalwarts with whom we had the fortune of associating ourselves in musical terms. So if one would want to know any other information, you are most welcome to write to us. At the same time, we thank you all for listening and attending this educative program. It's a very niche kind of program. It was not it is not, we did not want to make it a very popular program, uh, popular in inverted commas today, in today's terms. But we wanted to make, there is a concept, we are trying to take this concept a little forward so that, people in the next generation or people or the students or youngsters who are trying to sing and become aspirant musicians can follow certain footprints, certain basic guidelines of Indian classical music and Dhrupad at large. Thank you very much for joining, and we take
Namaskar and thank you everyone.
thanks everyone. Thank you once again.
See you again.